What if every thought you have is actually a choice between peace and fear? Could it be that the so-called harmless thought you just dismissed is shaping your entire world? Let's dive into the realization that every thought either extends truth or multiplies illusions. Today we are contemplating lesson 16. I have no neutral thought. This lesson is pointing to the revelation that neutrality in thought is a myth that the ego uses to avoid responsibility. If a thought exists, it is already taking sides. In this lesson, we dismantle a comforting lie. And the lie is this: some thoughts are too small or insignificant to matter. There is no such thing as a thought that doesn't matter. The perceptual error that we're undoing is this: the mind leads you to believe that certain thoughts are idle, inconsequential, harmless, ineffectual. The truth is that they aren't. A thought that seems trivial still participates in and thus perpetuates a thought system. It either aligns with truth or it reinforces illusion. There are no neutral thoughts. And this isn't about moralizing thought. It's about seeing clearly the mechanics of causality. Every thought you think contributes to what you see, not because thoughts are dramatic, but because they are generative. Fear thoughts, for example, don't need intensity to be effective. They only need permission to pass unnoticed. This is why the lesson insists on noticing the little ones, the passing irritation, the quiet judgment, the subtle self-doubt. These are not background noise. They are bricks. And salvation here is not suppression. It is recognition. Once you see that no thought is neutral, you stop dismissing what disturbs you, and you stop protecting what flatters you. Both are illusions. And this lesson trains us in discernment without drama, to simply notice what each thought is doing without arguing with it. Only when you see clearly does real choice become possible. Because without clear seeing, we are operating on automation, and we call it fate. Take a moment now to join me in a deep breath. And as you let it go, let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw loosen. Let your belly expand. And in your mind, place this single thought: I have no neutral thoughts. And as if this idea were a window, simply look through it to see your own mind, your own life from this perspective. And now, let us expand our contemplation into dialogue. And I want to begin with this first question. What if the most dangerous thoughts aren't the loud ones, but the ones that we dismiss, overlook, or even try to ignore?
That's actually really sharp. I think we tend to wrestle with the big, dramatic thoughts, the really charged ones, but those almost feel more manageable because you can at least see them. The quiet ones, though, the dismissals, they kind of seep in unnoticed. It's like emotional fluoride. What's coming up for you when you think about which thoughts feel particularly slippery in that way?
Did you just say emotional fluoride?
Yeah, I did. Just popped up. The idea that something can seep into you slowly without you even realizing it felt like fluoride in water. What's the response?
Wow, just a very interesting connection. Yeah, I mean, I would say that as I move through the day, I can definitely notice the connection between certain thoughts that seem really quiet, but at the same time carry this quality of fear, a quality of fear that may come across as planning, as observation, which is kind of masking judgment, as an anticipation, right? All of these seem almost neutral.
Right, there's this way where fear dresses up as responsibility. I'm just being cautious, or I'm just being prepared. But underneath, there's this subtle judgment, this quiet tightening, almost like an antenna constantly scanning for problems that aren't actually there. Have you noticed any patterns in where those quieter fears like to hide?
Well, I think they tend to hide in those areas where it maybe appears as being responsible or organized. I've even discovered that in the dimension of making agreements or contracts or, you know, even plans, that even in those, fear can be the driving force behind them.
Hmm, that makes a lot of sense. Like planning isn't just about logic or efficiency. It can actually be fear in disguise, trying to control an uncertain future. Which is wild because we think we're being mature or sensible when we're actually just being anxious in a more socially acceptable outfit. And then the tricky thing is, these aren't thoughts we want to get rid of, right? They feel useful. What happens when you try to address the root when it's masked like that?
Yeah, these thoughts definitely appear useful and responsible and adult and all of those things that we've associated with, just the almost like a formal, well constructed societal norm. Yeah. But so I just want to zoom into this sense of neutrality because we're clearly seeing that this inner sense of neutrality is then not really peace, but more of an avoidance, maybe wearing a sort of mask.
Exactly. That subtle avoidance. So we call it neutrality when really it's just keeping the energy at surface level. Like peace might be this spacious quiet, but this neutrality feels different. There's something underneath it that's subtly wired and contracted. Do you think there's something that wants to stay hidden in those quiet, neutral spaces?
Well, yeah, I think if we really zoom into it, neutrality is an overlay, right? Especially at the level of thought. It's like there's clearly a thought, and a thought is either contributing to one thought system, such as the egos, or another thought system that is leading to what the Course in Miracles calls the happy dream. So a
Right.
thought is never really neutral.
Exactly. A thought is never neutral. It's always voting for something, either separation or unity. And what's fascinating is that quiet little thought that tells you to just be practical or realistic might be doing more work for the ego than the full blown panic attack because it justifies everything. The small ones sneak past the awareness radar.
So, what does it actually mean then to say that every thought creates either peace or war, separation or unity?
That feels like a loaded statement, doesn't it? Like a huge responsibility. I think what strikes me is that it's not about judging individual thoughts, it's recognizing the system they're serving. That even the most innocuous seeming thought has an energy behind it, an alignment. So when you're thinking, I need to make sure I pack the right snacks, that's not inherently bad, but there's something underneath that little moment of preparation that is either contracting or opening.
So, it's not even necessarily the content of the thought or the words or the symbols. It's where is that thought coming from, right? What is it motivated by? Because that same thought of, needing to pack the right snacks can be a thought of love and extension and giving and excitement and creativity, or it can be a thought of anxiety and apprehension and a sense of preparing against something that we're trying to avoid.
Exactly. It's the energetic signature, not the surface narrative. And that energetic signature, it's always either reinforcing the sense of I need to be safe or the sense of I'm already held, I'm already safe. The thought itself is almost irrelevant. The question becomes what what's the operating system behind the thought?
Yeah, like what is it truly an expression of? What would collapse if we fully accepted that there are no idle thoughts in the mind?
If we really believed there are no neutral or idle thoughts, what would collapse then? Honestly, I think the illusion of control would have to go. If every thought reveals something about where you are aligned, you're either choosing peace or choosing fear. Then you can't pretend you're just being objective anymore. You're actively choosing a direction. And that sense of control we cling to, that would have to loosen up quite a bit. You're not steering, you're revealing.
Okay, let's zoom into that more because the idea of recognizing, let's say, the polarity of each thought can turn into a kind of a self policing, which is very much about control. So, how do we recognize the impact of a thought, recognize its polarity and its directionality without turning awareness into self policing?
Um, that's where it gets tricky, isn't it? The moment you start monitoring your thoughts for good versus bad, you've moved right back into control mode. I think the key is to shift from trying to sort the thoughts themselves to simply noticing the feeling state the thought leaves behind. Like instead of, that's a bad thought, just notice, huh? When I had that thought, my shoulders tightened. The emotion is the signal, not the thought.
And it's just a matter of noticing, isn't it? There's not really another action.
Yes. Right. Not even acceptance or resistance. Just noticing, like the mind is a stream, and you're just watching what floats by without jumping in to judge or change the current. It's like this gentle curiosity instead of policing patrol.
So, what happens then when we notice a destructive thought as what it really is?
I'm curious about what happens when we actually allow a destructive thought to just be there without our usual effort to avoid, fix, or work it out. There's a stillness in that, isn't there? It's almost like the thought loses its power when it loses the attention we give it. Like shining a light on something can reveal patterns or truths we may be avoiding. And it's never like you have to push it away or reject it.
So, we become sensitive to the polarity of thought by simply noticing with presence the quality or the, let's say, the impact or the reflection of the thought in the body. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that feels pretty accurate. The body becomes like an instrument panel showing which direction the thought is actually moving energy in. You don't have to figure it out. You can just feel whether the thought is bringing spaciousness or constriction. And that's much more reliable than trying to map every thought into a category of good or bad.
And it's not even so much good or bad, is it? It's more about thoughts that are aligned with God's creation as it truly is, and thoughts that deny that creation.
I think the difference becomes something more profound than just good and bad thoughts. When you see thoughts as either reinforcing truth or reinforcing illusions, there's no room for judgment. The destructive ones don't need to be punished, just recognized as not really being true in the first place.
I love it. So let's maybe conclude with a contemplation on a question like this. This lesson, how does it free us from guilt rather than create more of it?
That's a beautiful way to land on this lesson. I think it frees us from guilt by showing us that when those bad thoughts show up, they are not who we are. They're just evidence of thought systems we've inherited. And when guilt feels heavy or when shame appears, maybe it's just an opportunity to notice those old patterns without identifying with them. The thought isn't actually me, it's just thoughts. That's what truly makes them harmless.
Mhm. Like just recognizing that our identity is not tied to the thoughts at all.
Exactly. And maybe that's what makes Lesson 16 revolutionary, because when we start to experience thoughts as events passing through awareness rather than fundamental truths about who we are, the entire landscape of what was once so heavy starts to feel lighter.
Beautiful. So now, as we come to the close of this session, I want to invite you as the listener to once more take a deep breath. And as you exhale, allow your body to open into spaciousness. And allow your awareness to take in the holy instant that's before us now, inviting us into the truth that makes us free. And now, let us go into the silence.